Hello and welcome to this Foster Care Institute online training webinar. Accountability without accusation. I am your host, Dr. John DeGarmo, founder and director of the Foster Care Institute. I am a consultant for foster care agencies and child welfare programs across the country. I'm an author of several best-selling foster parenting books. I'm a trainer for foster parents and staff and caseworkers. And perhaps most importantly, I have been a foster parent to over 60 plus children who have come through my home and been a part of my family over the years. Our goal during this webinar is to help you have a better understanding of how to help teenagers and teens in crisis to become more accountable. We're going to increase your awareness of the differences between accountability and accusations. And we're going to help you gain an understanding of how to develop and implement some strategies that are designed to best help you as you help teens in crisis to become accountable for their actions, for their choices, and for their decisions. Here's a quote that you might find of interest. Quote, "Children that aren't taught accountability for their actions grow up to become adults that think nothing they do is wrong." End quote. And this is from the site Moms Living Thriftly. Now, before we look at accountability and accusations, it's important for us to recognize why teens in crisis might experience anxiety. As we know, so many teens in the foster care system do experience anxiety, and it's important for us to have a quick review of why that is so we can delve deeper into accountability. I want you to imagine a 15-year-old boy who is suddenly, without any type of warning, he is removed from his home. He's removed from his mother and his father. He's removed from his bedrooms and all of his belongings. He's removed from his house and his home. He's removed maybe from siblings and other relatives such as grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, close friends. He's removed from perhaps his school, his teachers he's formed relationships with, and his best friends and peers. If he goes to church as well, everything that he might know, and placed into a foster care residential setting and told, this is your new home, this is your new environment. Well, how does that teen feel? Well, for him, it is a tremendous time of anxiety. You can put aside all of the abuse, all of the neglect, all of the trauma, and all the anxiety he felt before being placed into the residential home. The anxiety, the abuse, the trauma, the neglect he experienced while in his home. When he comes to a residential therapeutical home, this is a time of great anxiety as well. Many times he's filled with confusion. He might not understand why he's placed there. He might not understand how long he's going to be there for. He might think he did something wrong himself. He may have questions such as, did I do something wrong? Will these new teens in this home hurt me? How will the staff treat me? When will I see my mom and dad again next? Am I going to go to a new school? And so on and so forth. He has many, many concerns, and he also has a lot of fears as well. Fear of the unknown. For many teens, it might be a time of anger as well. They may be angry at the new facility that they're being placed in. They might be angry at the staff members, the other teenagers in the home. He might be angry at the supervisors, a caseworker. He might be angry at his own birth parents. He might be angry at himself. Indeed, he may have guilt, thinking that he did something wrong to be placed there. He may have guilt if his parents are incarcerated, and he might believe that he had something to do with that as well. And for so many teens in crisis, they're filled with a great amount of self-doubt as well. When a youth in crisis is placed into a new facility, placement disruption, if you will. There are going to be disruptions in his life. It is, as we noted, a traumatic experience and a time of great emotional upheaval. Make no mistake, he is filled with emotions that he might not be able to properly process, that he might not be able to truly understand. Emotions that overwhelm him so much that he either lashes out or he withdraws. Again, he's in a new home environment. There are new rules that he doesn't understand or might not wish to follow. He has new, if you will, parents or parental figures, adult figures in his life that he does not know, that he may not trust. He's filled with separation anxiety, being separated from all that he knows, again, in a new facility. And there's a new school on top of that. And many times, he might be removed from his home, his family, without any type of notification whatsoever. It might come very, very quickly, very suddenly. He might be at school one day. Child welfare agency shows up at the school and he's removed from the school, never to see his parents again. He might be at home and the child welfare agency comes and removes him from his home. This can be very traumatic for that teen. So many times he's unprepared to move. His belongings, all that he might have, are quickly thrown into a garbage bags. There are quick goodbyes. And in no time whatsoever, he is in a home with strangers. Strange teenagers, strange caseworkers, strange staff members, strange supervisors. All strangers to him. For youth in foster care system, they have no control. They feel they have no control over their life. They did not ask to be removed from their home. They did not ask for the abuse in their life. They did not ask to be removed from their family members. They did not ask to be placed into a strange facility with people that they do not know. They did not ask to be surrounded by other teenagers that they do not know or trust. They did not ask to be in a home where there are new rules and expectations that they do not understand or necessarily agree with. Indeed, when a youth is removed from a home and placed into a foster care facility, there are going to be emotional, psychological, and social effects. Multiple displacement refers to every time a teenager is moved from one place to the next and to the next. And the more times he is placed into a facility or placed into another living environment and removed from that and placed into yet another one, well, his mental health will be threatened. Indeed, his mental health will be threatened with each move. And many times, his academic performances will suffer as well. Indeed, youth in foster care are generally, on average, 18 months behind academically from those traditional students, and they struggle with reading and math skills. Finally, it is absolutely critical for a teenager to form at least one healthy relationship with one parental figure or caretaker in their life in order to develop socially and emotionally. Yet, as they are removed from their home and placed into yet another home, it's going to make it very difficult, very challenging for that teenager to form any sort of relationship, positive, healthy, trusting relationship with another person. Now, for much more on this, make sure you watch our webinar, Anxieties and Disorders, here at the Foster Care Institute. So with all this in mind, you can see that teens in crisis, teens in the foster care system, teens at the residential home, they are doing the best they can. They're overwhelmed, they're suffering, they're confused, they're scared, they're angry, they're worried, they're troubling. They are struggling to do the best they can. So, how do we keep them accountable? Well, teaching accountability is an evolving process. Let's look at something known as compassionate curiosity. When you work with youth who might be struggling in some way, compassionate curiosity is one approach to use. You see, this curiosity is not necessarily to find the truth behind a situation involving a teen. It is not a way to teach a lesson when a teen may have made a poor choice. It's not to prove a point to that teenager when he might be in the wrong in your eyes. Instead, compassionate curiosity is a means of having a conversation with a teen in an attempt to better understand their challenges and their situation. And when you teach teens to be accountable for their actions, for their choices, for their decisions, it's quite important for you to use compassionate curiosity. Having that conversation with a teen, not blaming him, not accusing him, not judging him. You're doing so to attempt to better understand his challenges, her situations. Now let's look at accountability versus accusations. Quote, part of the problem is people don't know the difference between accusing and accountability. So every time someone is held accountable, they feel accused. We should not accuse people, meaning we don't blame or point the finger at them. Accusations are rarely based on fact or truth, but on allegations or claims that somebody has done wrong. End quote. And I think that's important for us to reflect upon. Let's look at that sentence again. We should not accuse people, meaning we don't blame or point the finger at them. So, when you're trying to teach a teen how to be accountable, there are a number of things that you should not do. When having a conversation with a teen who is struggling in whatever fashion it might be, it's important that you do not do the following. You see the teenager is upset. You see the teenager has made a bad choice. You see the teenager has been triggered in some fashion. You see the teenager might be screaming or yelling at somebody else, or cursing or swearing, or refusing to follow directions. What you do not do is tell him to calm down. What you do not do is remind him of the rules of the home. He doesn't need to be reminded. He knows what they are. He doesn't need to be told to calm down. In fact, it may escalate it even more so. You do not remind him that he can make better choices. Most likely he knows that. You do not remind him of all the possible consequences. You do not defend or explain other staff members' actions. He might be accusing a staff member of doing something or saying something. You do not defend their staff member's actions. You do not assure him that you want what's best for him. He does not want to hear that at this time. Remember, you are very likely a stranger in his life. Most likely, he may not trust the adults in his life at this time. Most likely, he has not formed a positive, healthy relationship with other adults. Most likely, he did not ask to be placed in the facility with you. So do not tell him what's best for him. Do not suggest that there are other ways to deal with his anger. Do not suggest other ways to deal with the situation. When he's upset, when he's angry, he does not want to hear that there are other ways. Do not tell him that two wrongs don't make a right. Again, these are not things to say or do when a teenager is upset. Consider this quote by Sam Altman. Quote, young people willing to push super hard to make something happen are among the most powerful forces in the world. End quote. Let me read that to you one more time, because the teens that you are working with, they might fall in this category. Quote, young people willing to push super hard to make something happen are among the most powerful forces in the world, end quote. There may be some teens that you're working with that live in the home that are going to make powerful changes and powerful forces of good in the world. They just need to be guided. They need to be led. They need to be cared for. They need to be heard, and they need to be taught accountability. Why is accountability important? Why is it important that we teach teenagers, particularly teenagers in crisis, the importance of accountability? Well, when a teen feels accused of something bad or negative by you, he might feel the following. He might be shocked. He might withdraw. He might panic. He might become angry. He might lose confidence in himself. He might sink into depression. He might feel guilty. He might have long-lasting trauma when he feels accused of doing something wrong by you. Remember, we do not want to accuse a teenager. We want to hold them accountable. Quote, accountability, on the other hand, is about responsibility and answerability, allowing us to examine our actions. In other words, accusations leave no room for exploration and growth, while accountability gives the opening for inspection, responsibility, and improvement of our actions. End quote. I want to highlight one phrase there for you again. Accusations leave no room for exploration and growth. Indeed, it is important that we get away from making accusations about the teen or to the teen. We do not want to accuse him of making poor choices. We do not want to accuse him of doing the wrong thing. We don't want to accuse him of not being able to handle his emotions in the proper way. We do not want to accuse him of yelling or screaming or cursing at others. We do not want to have those accusations. We want to help him learn accountability. Indeed, when helping a teen learn accountability, it helps him to gain a number of skills, including independence and control over his future when he takes responsibility for his choices and for his actions. Why else is accountability important? Well, it helps to build confidence. When a teen learns to take accountability on his actions and choices, and he makes good choices, it builds his confidence, it builds his self-esteem. He takes ownership of his mistakes. His mistakes are not being pointed out by you in an accusative fashion. When he learns accountability, he is taking ownership of his mistakes, as well as his successes. And this can help him build an internal sense of control and competence. When a teen learns the importance of accountability, it often helps them to reduce conflict with others. For those teens who always seem to be in conflict, perhaps with you or other staff members, perhaps with teens in the home, perhaps with people at the school, whatever it might be, he feels accused and he will lash out. But when you teach him the importance of accountability, many times it helps him to reduce that conflict because he takes ownership and accountability. And this helps him to reduce the blame towards others. Helps him to reduce the excuses that he might make or reduce those arguments. You see, when he becomes accountable, when he's learning the importance of accountability for himself, he learns to accept the results of his actions. Not blaming others, but he accepts of his actions. And it will help him to work to resolve the issues that he is struggling with. Accountability will also help to better prepare him for adulthood. You see, when we help teens, when we help teens in crisis learn the importance of accountability, of being accountable for their own actions, well, it helps him to develop this skill now, a skill that we all know he will need in every aspect and facet of his adulthood. It will help him in his job and career. It will help him in relationships with others. It will help him with finances. It will help him with good health and hygiene skills. It will help him in every aspect of his life. When he learns accountability now, accountability often leads to better decision making as well. Often, when a teen learns that he's accountable for his actions, he's accountable for his choices, well, it helps him to better consider the possible consequences before he makes a decision. Helps him to learn the possible consequences before he makes a decision, a choice, or acts out. Accountability also helps him to strengthen relationships in a positive manner. So many teens in crisis, so many teens in the foster care system do not have a positive relationship with another teen or another person in general. In fact, they have issues of trust and attachment. And when you are accusing him of doing something wrong, making a poor choice, whatever it might be, when you make those accusations, it's going to drive him further and further away from you and from others. But when we teach him the importance of accountability, well, it helps him to learn more responsibility, and it helps to build mutual respect. Mutual respect between you and him, as well as trust. That trust is so important for him. He needs to learn how to trust others. And when he becomes accountable for his actions, well, again, it builds mutual respect. In addition, when you and other staff members show that you believe in this teen, that you're cheering him on, that you're supporting him, that you're encouraging him, that you believe in him, well, many times he will try even harder to meet your expectations. Let's look at what Dr. Nikki White said about accountability and accusations. Quote, in the case of calling someone in and holding them accountable, we want to respond, not react. We want to make it clear what was said or done was harmful. And here's why. Reacting with anger, shame, or resentment will likely increase the temperature in the room and encourage defensiveness in the receiving party, which is helpful for no one and won't improve the situation. End quote. When we react with anger, when we make those accusations towards the teen, well, very many times he will become defensive because, again, he's feeling accused by you. And we do not want him to be defensive because when he feels defensive, that's often the time when he might lash out. So, how do we help him become accountable? Again, we don't want to accuse him of anything. We want to help him learn to be accountable for his actions. To begin with, we need to start small. We need to start small. Remember, that teen is very likely coming from a home, an environment where there were no expectations placed upon him. There was no structure. There was no stability. There was no rules or regulations. There was no consistency. And most importantly, there was no accountability. He does not understand the importance of accountability. In fact, he might not understand the whole concept of it. So we must start small. When trying to teach the teen accountability, we start small. We start with some small expectations, and we define those expectations very clearly. For example, we sit down And we define clearly and simply what the house rules and expectations are for him and for all of the teens living in the home. And we also very clearly, very simply, define the consequences for poor choices, for poor actions. Again, we're starting small, and we need to be at his level as well. Remember, he's coming from an environment where he might not understand it. And there's a number of ways that we can help him learn the expectations and the consequences. We can use charts. We can use pictures. We can use checklists as a reminders. Checklists we might place on his bathroom mirror. Checklist we might place on the refrigerator. A checklist that he might have on his online device if he has one. A number of places we can use these checklists, these pictures, these charts. Again, a good one is on his mirror in his bathroom or bedroom. He can look at daily. He can look at that checklist, those pictures, those charts every single morning, every single afternoon, every single evening as a gentle reminder. We're starting small here. We can teach him accountability by giving him choices. Whenever possible, allow him to make his own choices. Now, this may help him better see the consequences of his actions. You see, he's going to learn accountability on his own when the choices he made led to a negative result. And if he does make a poor choice and there are negative results, remember this. We're not accusing him of making those poor choices. We're not accusing him of doing the wrong thing. We're not pointing out the negative results in a harsh, negative fashion. When we give him more and more responsibilities over a period of time, it helps him to show that he can handle more responsibilities. So help him understand why each responsibility is important. Again, give him more responsibilities. Responsibilities of perhaps watching a little bit extra TV, maybe playing basketball later in the evening, maybe staying up a little bit later. Whatever it might be, give him more and more responsibilities over time. Helps him to understand why the responsibilities are important in his life. When he's doing the right thing, when he's making good choices, and holding himself accountable for those choices, he needs words of encouragement and praise from you. Every single day. Every day he needs to be encouraged by you when he makes good choices. Every day he needs to be praised by you when he holds himself accountable for the poor choices he may have made. Keep this in mind. He may have come from an environment where there was no one encouraging him, where there was no one praising him, where there was no one cheering him on, where there was no one telling him, you did the right thing. That's why he needs to hear from you today, tomorrow, the next day. If you think it's possible, consider giving him some extra privileges as well when he's holding himself accountable. Now, do not expect too much of him at first, especially if he's coming from an environment that did not have that structure, that stability, those responsibilities, those expectations, etc. You need to be reasonable with your expectations. Remember, he's learning here. He's learning how to be accountable. Avoid setting expectations that you know he can't simply reach. Keep the expectations at a minimum and keep them realistic. Now, there are times he will need help with things in his life. And that's fine to help him out. But do not overhelp him. Do not overhelp him with chores that he has to do. Do not overhelp him with responsibilities. Do not overhelp him with his own laundry, with his homework, with his household chores, etc. Now, we're not suggesting that in no way should you help him with his homework, but do not do it for him. Do not do his laundry for him or the bulk of it. Do not do the bulk of his household chores for him. Remember, he is learning to be accountable for his choices and responsibilities. So if he does not do the laundry, well, there's going to be a consequence to that decision, and he needs to be held accountable for that. If he chose not to do his homework, there will be accountability for that, whether in school or at the facility. And he will learn the importance of accountability for his actions. We all fail at things. In fact, failure is often the key to success later on. We learn from our failures. Each of us does. It's okay for him to fail at something as well. Allow him to fail. But continue to support and encourage him. Because you see, failure can help each of us to learn new strategies, to develop resiliency, and to avoid doing the wrong thing over again, to avoid repeated mistakes. So allow him to fail, but to continue supporting and encouraging him. Remember, he's watching you. He's listening to you. He's learning from you. You are a role model for him. Yes, I'm going to say that again. You are a role model for him. Many of the adults in his life could have been negative role models. He's watching what you do. He's listening to what you say, whether you're talking to him, to other teens, to other adults, to other staff members. He's learning from you by watching and listening to you. So when you make a mistake, and we all make mistakes, make sure that you stay positive. Do not belittle yourself. Do not yell at yourself or hurt yourself. Do not curse at yourself. Instead, remain positive and hold yourself accountable for the decisions that you made, instead of placing blame somewhere else. If you make a mistake, do not blame another staff member, another adult, a teen in the home. Accept your mistake, hold yourself accountable, and stay positive. Remember, he's watching you and listening to you, and he's learning from you. Use the moments that you make a mistake and you hold yourself accountable and you stay positive. Use these times to explain accountability to him. Tell him that you made a poor choice and you're holding yourself accountable, and explain this to him. Because it's important that he understands that he is ultimately responsible for his choices as well. Help him practice problem-solving skills. Teach him not to blame others. Instead, on how to react to the challenges in his life, the adversity he's facing, and bring the focus back to his choices. Bring the focus back to his actions. Talk to him a little bit about the choices he made. Talk to him about not blaming others. Bring the discussion back to his choices and his actions, and talk to him about how to correct his behavior or avoid the negative, poor outcome in the future. By saying something like, this is a decision that you made, this was the consequence, how can we avoid that in the future? You behaved this way when you were upset. This was the result. How can we avoid this from happening in the future? He needs these discussions from you. Now, if there are consequences already established, consequences already in place, consequences that you've discussed with him over and over again, and consequences that he understands, well, it's very important that you follow through with these consequences. Again, I point out to you that he's probably coming from an environment where there was no consistency when it came to consequences. If the consequences are ignored, you've established the consequences, you've discussed them, he understands them, but you ignore them, or the consequences are ignored in general or avoided, then you're taking away accountability for his actions. You must be consistent. You must be consistent with the consequences in a fair, loving fashion. Again, if the consequences are avoided or they're ignored, or you downplay them, then you're taking away the opportunity for him to learn the accountability for his actions. You might say, you know what, it's really not that bad. We're gonna learn better the next time. Again, he needs to have those consequences in place. This is how he learns. He learns that I made this choice. This is always going to be the consequence. Here's how I can avoid it from happening again. And this is especially important in the future as an adult. You can help him learn accountability by teaching him the importance of self-reflection each day. Help him to practice reflecting on what went well at the end of each day and what did not go well at the end of each day, perhaps each evening. Sit down and have a discussion with him. Talk about the choices he made and the results that happened. For example, if he failed or chose not to study for a test, and the test was that day, or he received a grade later on, it was not a good grade, it was a poor grade, talk to him about the choice he made, the result, the poor grade, and how he can avoid that grade, that poor grade in the future. Perhaps by studying more. Perhaps by putting more emphasis on studying each day. Again, just one example. The reflection at the end of each day can also include how to make the next day a better one. And let him know, remind him, in fact, or teach him that he is in charge of every day. When he wakes up in the morning and he's getting ready to go to school or getting ready to go to work, let him know that he's in charge of today and he can make the day a great one. He needs the words of encouragement from you. He needs you to be his cheerleader, cheering him on each day, letting him know that he can make today a great one, that he's in charge. It's very likely no one's had that conversation with him before. As we mentioned earlier, we certainly do not want to accuse a teenager of poor choices, poor decision making, of emotions that were negative or harmful in some way. We can't shame him into doing better. Instead, remind him that mistakes happen. Let him know that we all make mistakes. We all make mistakes. Talk to him about the poor choice that was made, not as a person, but as the choice. We don't tell him that he's a bad person. We let him know that a poor choice was made or a bad choice was made. We don't let him know that we don't like him as a person. We don't like the choice that he made. We don't let him know that he as a person can't make good choices. We just remind him that he can make better choices. Again, we're cheering him on. Self-blame and self-victimization seem to be on the increase in our society among young people, as well as blame upon others. Indeed, since the lockdowns of 2020 and 2021, many teens and youth seem to self-victimize themselves. They self-to-blame themselves and others as well. Do not allow him to blame others. Do not allow him to victimize himself, because this leads to other problems, other concerns, including mental health concerns. So instead, encourage him to use a time of self-reflection and personal accountability. Again, perhaps at the end of the day, he can have that time of self-reflection and he can hold himself accountable every single day. And you can help him do that by setting goals. Goals for each day. Goals for each week and each month, etc. And set a timetable for each goal. Perhaps the goal is to keep his room clean 7 days a week. Perhaps his goal is to not yell at another person in the home for 1 day. for 2 days, for 1 week. Perhaps the goal is not to curse or swear at a teacher in the school when he feels upset for 1 day, for 1 week. Perhaps his goal is to study each day for 20 minutes for today and tomorrow, this week, etc. And use a timetable for each goal. Help him create an accountability chart. Again, something we discussed earlier that he can see every single day. Again, a great place is on his mirror in his bedroom or bathroom that he can see it every day and post his accountability on this chart. We've talked a lot about encouragement. Yes, he does need encouragement, but he also needs praise. He needs to be reminded and maybe even told for the first time in a long time that he's loved. He might never have been told that before. He may not have heard those words in a long, long time. He will make mistakes. He might not hold himself accountable. There might be a misstep here or there where he regresses or he makes steps backwards. But he's still loved. He's not a bad person. He just made a poor choice. You don't hate him. In fact, you love him, even though he may have stepped back. He needs to hear those words. If it's not coming from you, if those words do not come from you, then he will seek it out elsewhere. And that could be a very dangerous place. Quote, true accountability is about helping your child learn from their mistakes and get better, not worse. End quote. Now, perhaps you need a little bit of encouragement yourself. Hey, we all need words of encouragement from time to time. You might find the little book of foster care wisdom, 365 Days of Inspiration and Encouragement for Foster Care Families. This is a good book for you as well because it gives you tips each day and words of encouragement as you care for teens and youth in crisis. And we have many books available at the Foster Care Institute. I'm sure there's a great book for you right now. For much more, visit us at the Foster Care Institute, Dr. John DeGarmo, fostercare.com. Follow me on Facebook and Twitter. If you have questions about this webinar or anything else, please feel free to contact me. If you're struggling right now with something, let your supervisor know, and they can contact me as well. I want to thank you. I want to thank you for taking time to watch this webinar. I know how busy you are. But more importantly, I want to thank you for helping the teens learn the importance of accountability, for not accusing that teen, but encouraging him. For not accusing that teen, but for praising him. For not encouraging and not accusing that teen, but teaching him how to be accountable, not only for today, but for his future. So thank you for all that you do for youth in crisis. Yes, you are making a difference. You are making a difference. Believe this, because it is true. For the Foster Care Institute, I'm Dr. John DeGarmo.